Montana Territory, 1878. The stallion reared against the corral fence, its wild eyes flashing with defiance as another battered cowboy stumbled away from the enclosure, hat in hand. Lucy Harlow watched from the stagecoach window as the defeated man shook his head at a tall figure standing at the edge of the corral, a man whose broad shoulders and commanding presence marked him as someone of importance, even from this distance. "That's Owen Montgomery's place," the driver called down. "Richest rancher in Paradise Valley. They say he's got a wild stallion nobody can break. 30 men tried already." Lucy's fingers tightened around the letter in her lap, the letter that had brought her thousands of miles from Boston to this untamed territory, to marry a man she'd never met. A man named Owen Montgomery. "We're here, miss," the driver announced as the stagecoach rolled to a stop in front of a sprawling ranch house. "Welcome to the Rockingham." Lucy gathered her meager belongings, a single trunk and a small carpet bag containing everything she owned in the world. At 22, with no family and few prospects in Boston, Owen Montgomery's advertisement for a mail-order bride had seemed like providence. His letters had been cordial, if not particularly warm, describing a prosperous cattle operation and a comfortable home. What he hadn't mentioned was the imposing figure he cut as he strode toward the stagecoach, dust swirling around his boots, his face partly shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. "Miss Harlow." His voice was deep, with a slight rasp that suggested he didn't use it often. Lucy straightened her spine and lifted her chin. "Mr. Montgomery, I presume." He nodded once, eyes traveling over her travel-worn appearance. She resisted the urge to smooth her wrinkled skirts or touch her hair, which had come loose from its careful arrangement during the bumpy journey. "You're earlier than expected," he said, taking her trunk from the driver. "I'd have sent someone to meet you." The stage made good time. Lucy clutched her carpet bag, taking in the sprawling ranch house with its wide porch and the bustling activity of the ranch yard. "Your home is impressive." Owen's expression remained impassive. "It serves its purpose." He gestured toward the house. "Mrs. Caldwell, my housekeeper, will show you to your room. You'll want to rest before dinner." Without waiting for a response, he turned and carried her trunk toward the house, leaving Lucy to follow in his wake. She caught the curious glances of cowboys pausing in their work to watch her progress, and the stallion's angry whinnying from the corral punctuated her arrival like an ominous welcome. This was not how she had imagined meeting her future husband. "He's been like this since Miss Harlow arrived," whispered Eliza Caldwell to the ranch foreman as they watched Owen pace the study later that evening. 3 days, and he's barely spoken 10 words to the poor girl." "Boss has always been a man of few words," the foreman replied. "But he's acting like he's the one who got corralled, not that demon horse." Inside the study, Owen stopped at the window, looking out at the moonlit corral where the black stallion paced restlessly. He'd captured the wild horse from the mountains 6 months ago, struck by its proud beauty and fierce independence. Something about taming that spirit had become an obsession, though 30 of his best cowboys had failed to even get near the animal without risking life and limb. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he called, not turning from the window. "Mr. Montgomery?" Lucy's voice was quiet but clear. "Mrs. Caldwell said you wished to see me." Owen turned, taking in the transformation from the travel-worn woman who had arrived on his doorstep to the composed figure before him. Her chestnut hair was neatly arranged, her simple blue dress pressed and proper. She held herself with dignity, though he detected uncertainty in her eyes. "Miss Harlow." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit." She perched on the edge of the seat, hands folded in her lap. "Have I done something to displease you, Mr. Montgomery?" The direct question surprised him. "Why would you think that? You've barely acknowledged my presence since my arrival. If you find me unsuitable as a bride, I would prefer you tell me outright." Her frankness was refreshing, if uncomfortable. Owen ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomfort from a man used to commanding respect with a glance. "I don't find you unsuitable, Miss Harlow. I find this entire arrangement challenging." "The arrangement you initiated," she reminded him, a flash of spirit in her hazel eyes. "Yes." He moved to his desk, picking up a letter, one of her letters. "You wrote eloquently. Your references spoke highly of your character and education. On paper, you were exactly what I was looking for. And in person?" Her voice was steady, though her fingers twisted in her lap. Owen studied her for a long moment. In person, you're more than I expected, and that complicates things. Lucy's brow furrowed. I don't understand. I need a practical arrangement, Miss Harlow. This ranch needs a mistress, someone to manage the household, host the occasional business associate, provide. He cleared his throat. Companionship. Those are the terms I agreed to, she said carefully. But I sense you want more. You left Boston seeking adventure, perhaps romance. He tapped her letter. You wrote of partnership and building a life together. Lucy stood, color rising in her cheeks. I wrote honestly of what I believe marriage should be, even one begun as ours. If that frightens you, Mr. Montgomery, perhaps you should have sought a housekeeper instead of a wife. Owen's expression hardened. I've been alone a long time, Miss Harlow. I built this ranch from nothing. I don't need a partner, she finished for him. Someone who might challenge you? Someone you can't control as easily as your ranch hands and cattle. Her insight struck uncomfortably close to home. Owen moved to the window again, looking out at the corral where the stallion continued its restless pacing. That horse, he said after a long silence. I've had 30 cowboys try to break him. The best horseman in 3 territories. All failed. Lucy followed his gaze. What does that have to do with our arrangement? Owen turned, his expression unreadable. A dare, Miss Harlow. Train that stallion, and I'll believe you have the strength for life here. For a real marriage, not just the practical arrangement I proposed. She stared at him, incredulous. You're comparing me to a horse? I'm offering you a chance to prove yourself on terms we both understand. And if I refuse, then we continue as planned. We marry, you manage the household, we share a roof, but little else. His voice softened slightly. But if you succeed where 30 men have failed, you'll what? Lucy challenged. Deign to treat me as a true wife rather than a convenient arrangement? Owen's jaw tightened. I'll accept that perhaps I've underestimated what's possible. Lucy looked from Owen to the stallion and back again. She'd grown up in the city, but her uncle had owned a small stable outside Boston where she'd spent summers learning horsemanship, a skill considered appropriate for a young lady of modest means. But this was different. That stallion had defeated experienced cowboys. I accept your dare, Mr. Montgomery, she said finally, lifting her chin. But I have terms of my own. His eyebrows rose. Which are? If I succeed, we begin again, not as mail-order bride and reluctant groom, but as 2 people learning to build something together. A real chance. And if you fail? Lucy's gaze was steady. Then I return to Boston, and you find another arrangement more suitable to your limited expectations. Owen studied her for a long moment before extending his hand. We have an agreement, Miss Harlow. As their hands met, the stallion's wild cry echoed through the night, a sound that seemed both challenge and promise. The following morning, Lucy stood at the corral fence, studying the magnificent black stallion that pawed the ground and tossed its head at her approach. The horse was truly beautiful, 16 hands of rippling muscle and untamed spirit, with intelligent eyes that seemed to assess her as thoroughly as she assessed him. His name's Tempest, came Owen's voice behind her, though some of the hands call him Devil. Lucy didn't turn. Neither name suits him. What would you call him then? She watched as the stallion circled the corral, power in every movement. Freedom, she said softly. That's what he wants most. Owen joined her at the fence, his presence solid beside her. That's what makes him dangerous. He'll never surrender it. Perhaps he shouldn't have to. Lucy turned to face him. Not everything valuable must be broken to be useful. Something flickered in Owen's eyes, surprise, or perhaps recognition. You have 2 weeks, Miss Harlow. The same time I gave each cowboy. I'll need supplies, she said. And no interference from your men. Whatever you need, Owen agreed. But the same rules apply. No one enters the corral with him unless I approve it. Too dangerous otherwise. Lucy nodded, her mind already forming a plan. I'll need oats, apples, sugar cubes. And a chair. A chair. Owen looked at her skeptically. Yes, Mr. Montgomery. A sturdy wooden chair. A smile touched her lips. And your promise to keep an open mind. Over the next 3 days, Lucy's methods drew curious stares from the ranch hands and obvious skepticism from Owen. Rather than attempting to enter the corral, she placed a chair just outside it and simply sat, reading aloud from a book of poetry while the stallion alternately ignored her and charged the fence in displays of dominance. "You're wasting your time," one of the cowboys remarked on the fourth day as he passed by. "That beast only respects strength." Lucy continued reading, raising her voice slightly as she responded without looking up. "Perhaps what he doesn't respect is fear disguised as strength." By the end of the first week, the stallion had begun approaching the fence when Lucy arrived, though he still kept his distance. She had progressed to offering apples on an outstretched palm through the fence rails, which the horse would sometimes take after long minutes of deliberation. "Interesting approach," Owen commented one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner, a new ritual that had developed since Lucy's arrival. "But patience won't get you on his back." "I'm not trying to get on his back yet," she replied. "I'm trying to earn his trust." Owen studied her in the fading light. "Trust is overrated. Respect is what matters in the wild." "And what about between people, Mr. Montgomery?" Lucy asked quietly. "Is trust overrated there as well?" He didn't answer immediately, his gaze drifting to the distant mountains. "Trust requires vulnerability. In my experience, vulnerability is just an invitation to betrayal or disappointment." "That's a lonely way to live," Lucy observed. "It's a safe way to live," he countered. Lucy shook her head. "Safe, perhaps, but is it living?" The question hung between them as darkness fell over the ranch. On the 10th day, Lucy asked Owen to have the corral gate secured open, leading to a smaller enclosed paddock. "He'll just escape," Owen warned. "No," Lucy said with quiet confidence. "He'll choose to explore." "There's a difference." To everyone's amazement, she was right. After hours of cautious investigation, the stallion ventured through the gate into the second enclosure where Lucy had left piles of fresh oats and apples. Once there, he allowed her to approach closer than ever before, though still maintaining a watchful distance. "How did you know?" Owen asked that evening, genuine curiosity in his voice. Lucy smiled. "He's not trying to escape captivity, Mr. Montgomery. He's trying to maintain his dignity. Given a choice rather than a command, he'll often make the one you want, as long as it feels like his decision." Owen's gaze was penetrating. "Are we still talking about the horse?" "Are we?" Lucy returned softly. As the second week neared its end, Lucy's progress with the stallion had become the main topic of conversation at the ranch. The horse now allowed her to approach, to stroke his neck, and even to place a light blanket on his back, achievements that had eluded the cowboys who had tried force and dominance. "She's got away with that devil," the foreman told Owen as they watched from a distance. "Never seen anything like it." Owen nodded, his expression thoughtful. "She has a way about her," he agreed, his eyes following Lucy's graceful movements. On the morning of the 14th day, the final day of their agreement, Lucy rose before dawn. She dressed carefully in a split riding skirt she had convinced Mrs. Caldwell to help her alter from one of her dresses, and made her way to the corral where the stallion waited, somehow sensing the importance of the day. Owen was already there, leaning against the fence. "Today's the day," he said, his voice giving away nothing of his thoughts. Lucy nodded, meeting his gaze steadily. "Yes, it is." "The agreement was to train him, to ride him," Owen reminded her. "Not just to make friends." "I remember our terms, Mr. Montgomery." She gathered the bridle she had modified, with its gentler bit and padded nose band. "Will you open the gate for me?" Owen hesitated. "He could still hurt you." "He could," she acknowledged. "But I don't believe he will." After a moment of tension, Owen unlatched the gate, swinging it open just enough for Lucy to slip through. The ranch hands had begun to gather at a respectful distance, drawn by the news that the Boston bride was making her final attempt. Inside the corral, Lucy moved slowly, speaking in low, soothing tones to the stallion who watched her with alert eyes. She offered an apple from her pocket, which he took with surprising gentleness. Then, with deliberate movements, she raised the bridle. The stallion tossed his head, backing away several steps. "It's all right," she murmured. "This is different." "See." She held it out, letting him sniff and investigate the modified bridle. Minutes stretched into an hour as Lucy worked patiently, never rushing, never forcing. Gradually, incredibly, the stallion allowed the bridle to be slipped over his head, the bit accepted without the battle that had characterized previous attempts. A murmur went through the watching cowboys. Next came the light saddle blanket, then the small lady's saddle Owen had found in storage at Lucy's request. Each step was met with initial resistance, then acceptance as the stallion seemed to sense Lucy's genuine respect for his boundaries. When she finally placed a foot in the stirrup and slowly, carefully swung herself onto his back, a hush fell over the yard. The stallion tensed, sidestepping nervously, but didn't buck or rear as he had with every previous rider. Lucy sat motionless, giving him time to adjust to her weight. Then, with the lightest pressure of her knees and a gentle word, she asked him to walk forward. The stallion took one step, then another, and then was walking steadily around the corral with Lucy balanced gracefully on his back, her face alight with a joy that transformed her. Owen stood transfixed, his hands gripping the fence rails as he watched horse and rider move in growing harmony around the enclosure. When Lucy finally guided the stallion to a stop in front of him, there was something in his expression she hadn't seen before. Respect, certainly, but something else too. Something that made her heart beat faster. "You did it," he said simply. Lucy smiled, her cheeks flushed with triumph. "We did it," she corrected, patting the stallion's neck. "Together." Owen opened the gate wider. "Will he let you take him out?" "Let's find out." Lucy nudged the horse forward, and to everyone's amazement, the stallion walked calmly through the gate into the larger paddock beyond, where he broke into a controlled trot with Lucy moving in perfect rhythm with his strides. The ranch hands broke into spontaneous applause and cheers. Even Mrs. Caldwell had come out to witness the spectacle, wiping tears from her eyes at the beautiful sight of woman and horse moving as one. After several circuits of the paddock, Lucy guided the stallion back to where Owen waited. Her eyes met his as she came to a stop. "I believe I've won our dare, Mr. Montgomery," she said, slightly breathless from exhilaration. Owen's usual reserve had fallen away, replaced by genuine admiration. "You've more than won it, Miss Harlow. You've taught me something I didn't expect to learn." "And what's that?" she asked, still seated atop the now calm stallion. "That some wild things aren't meant to be broken." His voice softened. "They're meant to be partnered with." That evening, as sunset painted the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson, Owen and Lucy walked together along the creek that bordered the ranch's eastern pastures. The day's triumph had shifted something fundamental between them, creating a space where words came more easily. "You never told me how you learned to handle horses like that," Owen said, helping her over a fallen log. Lucy smiled at the memory. "My uncle kept horses outside Boston. After my parents died, I spent summers with him. He had a way with difficult animals. He taught me that gentleness isn't weakness, it's just another kind of strength." "Your uncle sounds like a wise man." "He was." She paused, looking out over the landscape. "He died last year. That's why I answered your advertisement. There was nothing left for me in Boston." Owen studied her profile, struck by her quiet resilience. "And now, do you regret coming here?" Lucy turned to face him. "No. Despite our challenging beginning, I believe I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a bend in the creek where a large cottonwood tree provided a natural resting place. Owen gestured to a smooth boulder. "My mother used to bring me here when I was a boy," he said, surprising Lucy with the personal revelation. "Before she and my father died in the influenza outbreak of '63. "I'm sorry," Lucy said softly. "How old were you?" 15. Owen's expression darkened with memory. Old enough to fight off the banker who wanted to take the ranch, young enough to be terrified I'd fail. "But you didn't fail," Lucy observed, looking back toward the prosperous ranch house visible in the distance. "No." His voice held pride tinged with something else, perhaps loneliness. "I built it into the largest cattle operation in the valley. But sometimes I wonder if it was worth the cost." "What cost?" Owen met her gaze directly. "The part of myself I closed off to do it. The connections I never allowed myself to make." The confession hung in the air between them, more intimate than any physical touch. "It's never too late to open those closed doors," Lucy said gently. "If you want to." Owen stepped closer, his usual reserve giving way to something more vulnerable. "The terms of our agreement," he began. "You succeeded with the stallion. That means that we begin again," she finished for him. "As equals. As partners." "Partners," he repeated, testing the word. "I've never had one of those." Lucy smiled. "Neither have I. We'll learn together." Owen reached for her hand, his calloused fingers enveloping hers. "Lucy," he said, using her given name for the first time. I made a mistake in how I approached this arrangement. I thought I needed someone to fill a role, not share a life. And now, her voice was barely above a whisper. Now I'm wondering if you might consider marrying me not because of our agreement, but because you want to. Because there might be something worth building here, between us. Lucy's heart quickened at the genuine emotion in his voice. Are you actually asking, Owen? The sound of his name on her lips seemed to decide something for him. He took both her hands in his. Lucy Harlow, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Not as the fulfillment of a contract, but as the beginning of a partnership? She studied his face, seeing the hope and uncertainty there. On one condition, she said, her lips curving in a smile. Name it, that you kiss me now, so we'll know if there's any hope for this partnership at all. For the first time since she'd arrived, Lucy saw Owen Montgomery truly smile, a transformation that made her breath catch. He stepped closer, one hand rising to gently cup her cheek. That's a condition I'm happy to meet, he murmured, before lowering his lips to hers. The kiss began tentatively, a gentle exploration that quickly deepened as the connection between them ignited into something neither had expected. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. I think, Owen said, his voice rough with emotion, that our partnership has considerable promise. Lucy laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. I accept your proposal, Owen Montgomery. He pulled her close again, his arms strong and sure around her waist. And the stallion? What shall we do with him now that you've won him? He isn't a prize to be won, Lucy corrected gently. He's chosen to trust me. There's a difference. Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. What will you call him? Freedom seems inappropriate now. Lucy considered for a moment. Phoenix, she decided. Because from the ashes of what others tried to force him to be, he's become something new, something better. Phoenix, Owen agreed, his gaze never leaving hers. A fitting name for new beginnings. They were married 3 weeks later in the ranch's flower garden that Lucy had begun restoring. The ceremony was small but joyful, attended by the ranch hands, Mrs. Caldwell, and a few neighboring ranchers curious about the Boston bride, who had tamed both Montgomery's wild stallion and, by all appearances, the man himself. Owen had surprised Lucy by having her uncle's favorite hymns played by a quartet brought in from Helena, a thoughtful gesture that had brought tears to her eyes. For his part, Owen found himself moved by the sight of Lucy walking toward him in a simple cream-colored dress adorned with wildflowers, her chestnut hair crowned with a circlet of the same blooms. Never thought I'd see the day, the foreman whispered to Mrs. Caldwell as they watched the couple exchange vows. Boss looks like he's found his match. Takes a special woman to stand eye to eye with Owen Montgomery, Mrs. Caldwell replied with satisfaction. I had a feeling about this one from the start. As summer turned to fall, the Rockingham Ranch flourished under the care of its partnership. Lucy brought new ideas for expanding the operation, suggesting they breed and train horses alongside the cattle business, beginning with Phoenix, who had proven himself not only trainable, but exceptional once his spirit was respected rather than broken. Owen found himself rediscovering joy in the work that had once been merely obligation. Together they faced the challenges of ranch life, a difficult cattle drive, negotiations with the railroad, and the endless work of maintaining a thriving enterprise in the still wild territory. But the greatest transformation was in their private moments. The easy conversations over dinner, the shared laughter on the porch as twilight settled over the valley, and the nights when they learned each other's bodies with the same patience and respect that had marked their growing love. One evening, nearly a year after Lucy's arrival, they sat together on horseback atop a ridge overlooking the ranch. Owen on his bay gelding and Lucy astride Phoenix, who had become her devoted companion. I have news, Lucy said, her voice laced with excitement and a touch of nervousness. Owen turned to her, eyebrows raised. Good news, I hope? She smiled, radiant in the golden light of sunset. The best kind. By spring, there will be 3 of us living in that big house. Owen's expression transformed as understanding dawned. Lucy, he breathed, reaching across to take her hand. Are you certain? She nodded, eyes bright with happiness. Dr. Miller confirmed it yesterday. We're going to have a child, Owen. In one fluid motion, Owen dismounted and moved to help Lucy from her saddle. pulling her into an embrace that conveyed all the emotions words couldn't express. When he finally found his voice, it was rough with feeling. "I thought building this ranch was my greatest achievement," he said, his forehead resting against hers. "I was wrong. Finding you, building this life with you, that's what matters." Lucy leaned into his embrace, surrounded by the beauty of the land that had become her home. "Do you ever think about how different things might have been if I hadn't taken your dare that day?" Owen shook his head, his arms tightening around her. "I think somehow we would have found our way to this. Some things are meant to be, even when we try our hardest to avoid them." "Like a stubborn rancher and his equally stubborn mail-order bride," she teased. "Exactly like that," he agreed, kissing her softly. As they remounted their horses and rode side by side toward home, the setting sun cast their shadows long across the land they shared. Two figures moving in perfect harmony, neither leading nor following, but walking the path together. Behind them, the mountains stood as silent witnesses to a love story that had begun with a dare and blossomed into something neither had dared to hope for. A partnership of equals, built on respect, trust, and the courage to remain wild and free, even within the bonds of love.